Welcome, aspirants. Today, we are undertaking a deep dive analysis into Chapter 11, focusing on the birth of the Indian National Congress and the subsequent 2 decades of moderate politics. For a UPSC candidate, this is the most critical period to understand because it provided the intellectual and organizational brick and mortar upon which the entire superstructure of the freedom struggle was eventually built. We will now dissect this era topic by topic, moving from the foundational myths to the economic critique and the eventually hostile response of the British Raj. A. The Genesis, Foundation of the Indian National Congress, 1885. By the early 1880s, the political soil of India was ready for an all-India organization. The regional associations we studied in Chapter 10 had prepared the ground, but a national platform was required to unify these disparate voices. The architect and the forerunners. The final shape to the idea of a national body was given by A.O. Hume, a retired English civil servant. However, we must acknowledge the Indian National Conference as the immediate precursor. Organized by Surendranath Banerjee and Ananda Mohan Bose in 1883 and 1885, these conferences had representatives from all major towns of India and served as the dress rehearsal for the Congress. The first session, Bombay, 1885. Venue, Gokuldas Tejpal Sanskrit College, Bombay. Date, December 1885. President, Vomesh Chandra Banerjee. Delegates, 72 members, drawn from the upper middle class intelligentsia. Evolution. From this point forward, the Congress met every year in December, rotating its venue across the country to ensure its national character. Symbolic inclusivity. A landmark moment occurred in 1890 when Kadambini Ganguly, the first woman graduate of Calcutta University, addressed the Congress session. This was not just a speech, it was a powerful symbol of the movement's commitment to giving the women of India their due status in national life. I. The historiographical debate. Was it a safety valve? This is a favorite theme for UPSC mains. Why did a retired British official help start an Indian nationalist organization? There are three primary schools of thought. 1. The safety valve theory. Propounded largely by extremist leaders like Lala Lajpat Rai, this theory suggests that Hume formed the Congress to provide a safe outlet for the growing discontent among Indians. The goal was to prevent another violent outburst like the 1857 revolt by allowing Indians to vent their grievances through constitutional channels. Hume allegedly convinced Lord Dufferin, the viceroy, to not obstruct this formation. 2. The conspiracy theory. Marxist historians such as R.P. Dutt argued that the Congress was a product of a conspiracy between the British and the Indian bourgeois leaders to abort a genuine popular uprising. 3. The lightning conductor theory. Modern Indian historians, most notably Bipin Chandra, have countered these myths. They argue that the early Congress leaders were politically astute enough to use Hume as a lightning conductor. They knew that if an Indian had started such a body, the British would have suppressed it instantly. By having a retired British official at the helm, they provided the organization with a shield against immediate colonial repression, allowing nationalistic forces to gather strength. 3. Aims and objectives, the moderate vision. The early Congress was not yet a movement for Purna Swaraj, complete independence. Its aims were foundational, founding a democratic movement to establish the headquarters for a nationalistic struggle. Political education, to politicize the masses and create an awareness of their rights. National unification, to promote friendly relations among political workers and nurture a sense of national unity regardless of religion, caste or province. Anti-colonial ideology, to develop and propagate an ideology that challenged the moral and economic basis of British rule. India's of the Moderates, 1885 to 1905. Methodology and leadership. The leaders who dominated this phase, Dadabhai Nauroji, Firoza Shah Mehta, D.E. Vacha, W.C. Banerjee, and S.N. Banerjee, are known as the moderates. 1. The moderate mindset. They were staunch believers in liberalism and orderly progress. They believed that the British were inherently just, but were simply unaware of the real conditions in India. Therefore, their task was to educate the British government and public opinion. 2. The methodology, the 3 Ps. The moderates relied on a three-pronged approach within the confines of the law. Prayer, sending petitions to the government; petition, presenting formal memoranda; protest, holding public meetings and passing resolutions. They avoided mass mobilization or direct confrontation, preferring constitutional agitation. 3. International lobbying. The moderates understood that the ultimate power lay in London. In 1889, a British committee of the INC was established in London, and it published the journal India to represent the Indian case to the British public. Dadabhai Naoroji spent a large part of his life and wealth in England, campaigning for India's welfare. V. The intellectual assault, the drain theory. The greatest contribution of the moderates was their economic critique of British imperialism. This is a vital topic for your optional paper. 1. Analyzing the colonial economy. Led by Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt, and Dinsha Vacha, the early nationalists exposed how the British were transforming India into a colonial economy, a mere supplier of raw materials and a market for finished British goods. 2. The drain of wealth. Naoroji popularized the drain theory in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. He argued that a huge portion of India's national product was being transferred to Britain without any material return. Components of the drain: salaries and pensions of officials, interest on loans, and profits of foreign investment. Impact: this drain denuded India of its productive capital and was the primary cause of its poverty. 3. The nationalist demands. To counter this, the moderates demanded reduction in land revenue and military expenditure, abolition of the salt tax, tariff protection for Indian industries to allow them to grow against foreign competition. 6. Constitutional reforms and the 1892 Act. The moderates worked with the long-term goal of democratic self-government. Their agitation led to the Indian Councils Act of 1892. 1. Main provisions: high yield for prelims. Council expansion: increased the number of non-official members in the imperial and provincial legislative councils. Indirect election: introduced the principle of representation, as members could be recommended by universities, municipalities, and chambers of commerce. Financial discussion: for the first time, members were allowed to discuss the budget and ask questions with 6 days' notice. 2. The critique of the Act. The moderates were quickly disillusioned by the Act's limitations. Non-official minority. The official minority remained intact, making the non-official voice ineffective. Limited power. The budget could not be voted upon or amended. No supplementaries. Supplementaries were not allowed, and the executive's answers could not be discussed. The nationalists responded with the famous slogan, "No taxation without representation." 7. General administrative reforms and civil rights. 1. Administrative demands. The moderates campaigned for the Indianization of the civil services. They argued this on economic grounds. British officials were paid high salaries which were remitted home, causing a drain. Moral grounds. It was discriminatory to keep Indians away from positions of trust in their own country. They also called for the separation of judicial from executive functions to ensure fair justice. 2. Protection of civil rights. The defense of civil liberties, the right to speech, press, and association, became a pillar of the struggle. The public outrage at the arrest of Tilot in 1897 for sedition showed how deeply the consciousness of these rights had penetrated the Indian mind. 8. Evaluation. The balance sheet of the moderates. As future administrators, you must be able to critically evaluate the early nationalists. 1. Successes. National awakening. They created a sense of belonging to one nation and trained people in political work, undermining the moral basis of rule. By exposing the drain, they proved that British rule was not in India's interest. The seed time. Bipin Chandra notes that the period from 1858 to 1905 was the seed time of Indian nationalism, and the seeds were sown well and deep. 2. Failures. Narrow social base. The movement remained confined to the urban middle class and zamindars. Lack of faith in the masses. The moderates viewed the masses as ignorant and conservative, and thus did not include them in the political straddle. Passive nature. Lala Lajpat Rai criticized it as an opportunist movement that failed to move beyond political mendicancy. I. The British reaction, from contempt to hostility. Initially, the British were indifferent to the Congress, but as its critique sharpened, their attitude stiffened. Dufferin stoned. He dismissed the Congress as a microscopic minority and a factory of sedition. Curzon's ambition. In 1900, Lord Curzon famously stated, "The Congress is tottering to its fall, and one of my great ambitions is to assist it to a peaceful demise." Divide and rule. The government encouraged reactionary elements like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and Raja Shiv Prasad to form the United Indian Patriotic Association to counter the Congress. Conclusion. The moderates may not have achieved independence, but they performed the historic task of explaining the exploitative nature of the Raj. They were the brick and mortar buried deep in the foundation, making the future superstructure of Swaraj possible. If you found this strategic overview helpful, please like, subscribe, and share this journey with your fellow aspirants. If you have any questions regarding what we have discussed today, drop a comment below. I will be personally addressing your doubts to ensure your conceptual clarity is absolute.